I saw it happen in slow motion. My daughter-in-law leaning over my plate while I pretended to look for my phone. The deliberate pucker at her lips. The glob of saliva landing right on my mashed potatoes. She stirred it in with my fork, smiling like she'd just seasoned a gourmet meal. My hands shook, not from shock, but from rage I'd been swallowing for 2 years. That night, I decided she'd choke on her own poison. Because while she thought she was living in her house, playing queen in her kingdom, I held a secret that would shatter everything. The deed had my name on it. Not theirs. Mine. Before the story begins, subscribe and tell me where you're watching from. My name is Margaret Eleanor Hartwell, and I'm 73 years old. For most of my life, I believed kindness was currency. That if you gave enough love, enough patience, enough silent sacrifice, people would eventually see your worth. I raised my son Daniel with that philosophy. I buried my husband 6 years ago with that hope still intact. And when Daniel brought home Vanessa, pretty, polished Vanessa, with her Instagram-perfect smile, I opened my door, my home, and my foolish heart. That was my first mistake. The house we all lived in wasn't just any house. It was the house my late husband Thomas and I built from nothing. 47 years ago, we bought this land when it was just dirt and wildflowers on the edge of town. Thomas worked double shifts at the factory while I cleaned houses and took in sewing. We drew the blueprints on our kitchen table, arguing over where the windows should go, how big the porch should be. Every nail, every floorboard, every coat of paint, we put our souls into it. When Thomas got sick, the medical bills nearly drowned us. I sold my mother's jewelry, his truck, everything we could spare. The house was the only thing left. And when he died, lying in our bedroom with the morning light coming through the curtains we'd chosen together, he squeezed my hand and whispered, "Don't ever let anyone take this from you, Maggie. This is yours." I kept that promise. The deed stayed in my name, Margaret Eleanor Hartwell, sole owner. No joint tenancy, no transfer on death, nothing. It was my insurance policy, my final thread of independence. I never told Daniel. Why would I? He was my son. I trusted him. I trusted them both. Daniel met Vanessa at some tech startup mixer 3 years ago. She worked in marketing. Or was it social media? Something digital and modern that I never quite understood. She was 28 to his 34, with long dark hair that always looked professionally blown out, even on casual Sundays. She wore athleisure outfits that cost more than my monthly grocery bill, and talked about wellness and self-care like they were revolutionary concepts she'd personally discovered. At first, I tried to like her. I really did. When they got engaged after 6 months, I hosted the announcement dinner. I cooked for 2 days, my famous pot roast, homemade rolls, Thomas's favorite chocolate cake. Vanessa ate 3 bites and spent the evening taking photos of the food for her Instagram, filtering and editing while the rest of us ate. She posted it with the caption, "Blessed to be joining the most authentic family." Authentic. That word stung more than she knew. The wedding was small, mostly because Vanessa said large weddings were wasteful and not aligned with her values. What she meant was that her parents weren't contributing, and Daniel's teacher salary couldn't cover the Pinterest-perfect ceremony she'd envisioned. I offered to help. I shouldn't have, but I did. I liquidated a small retirement fund Thomas and I had set aside. The emergency money we'd never touched through all our emergencies. $8,000. I gave them $8,000. Vanessa cried when I handed her the check, hugging me so tight I could smell her expensive perfume. "You're the mother I never had," she whispered. "I'll never forget this." She forgot before the honeymoon ended. After they married, their apartment lease ended, and they started looking for a place. The market was brutal. Tiny apartments renting for twice what Daniel made. I watched my son stress himself gray over spreadsheets and rejection letters. So I made another mistake. I invited them to move in with me. Just temporarily, I said, until you get on your feet. Daniel looked relieved. Vanessa looked calculating. But I dismissed it. She hugged me again, said all the right words about gratitude and family and how temporary it would be. That was 2 years ago. 2 years of watching my home become unrecognizable. Vanessa started small, rearranging furniture for better feng shui, replacing my curtains with minimalist blinds, painting over the soft yellow kitchen walls Thomas and I had chosen, with a stark white she called Scandinavian. When I protested, she smiled sympathetically, like I was a child throwing a tantrum. "Margaret, I know change is hard at your age," she'd say, touching my arm with false warmth. "But we need to make this space work for everyone. You understand, right?" Daniel always backed her up. "Mom, it's just paint. Let's keep the peace." Keep the peace. That became his mantra, his excuse for every boundary she crossed, every piece of me she erased. She threw out my gardening magazines because they were clutter. She donated my favorite armchair to Goodwill while I was at my bridge club because it was worn out. She banned my spice collection from the kitchen because it wasn't aesthetic for her cooking videos. Every week, another piece of Thomas, another piece of me disappeared. But I swallowed it because Daniel seemed happy, because I didn't want to be the difficult mother-in-law, because maybe, I really was too stuck in the past. The real shift happened about 8 months in, during a dinner conversation I wasn't supposed to hear. I'd gone to bed early with a headache, but came back downstairs for aspirin. They were in the kitchen, voices low, but not low enough. "Can't wait forever, Danny," Vanessa was saying. "My career is stalling because we're stuck in this geriatric prison. Do you know what Chelsea just bought? A 4-bedroom in the new development with a home office and a yoga studio. Meanwhile, I'm doing my content creation in a house that smells like mothballs and regret. Van, that's my mom you're talking about. Your mom who's squatting in a house too big for one person while we're cramped in a guest room like we're college kids. This was supposed to be temporary." "I know, but the market." "We can't afford the market because we're pouring money into groceries and utilities for a house we don't even own." When was the last time she contributed? She's retired, Daniel, living off Social Security while we subsidize her lifestyle. My heart stopped. We'd never discussed finances, but I'd assumed, wrongly apparently, that they understood. My Social Security barely covered my medications and personal expenses. The house was paid off, but the property taxes, insurance, maintenance, I'd been covering all of that, draining my meager savings every year. "That's not fair," Daniel said weakly. "She lets us live here rent-free." Rent-free in a museum. God, Danny, when's the last time she even updated the plumbing? The water pressure is a joke. The whole place needs renovating, but she throws a fit if I move a picture frame. She's set in her ways, she's selfish, and you're too guilty to see it. Silence. Long enough that I held my breath, waiting for Daniel to defend me, to tell his wife she was wrong. "What do you want me to do?" he finally asked. "Talk to her about the house. See if she'd consider transferring it to us. We could take over everything. The bills, the maintenance, all of it. She could still live here, obviously. We're not monsters, but at least we'd have equity, something to show for the years we're wasting here." She'd never go for that. Then we need to make her see reason. Or make this place so uncomfortable, she decides to move to one of those nice senior living places. They have activities, Daniel. People her own age. She'd probably be happier. I crept back upstairs, aspirin forgotten, and cried into Thomas's pillow until dawn. The next morning, Vanessa smiled at me over coffee like nothing had happened. Margaret, I was thinking, wouldn't you love one of those retirement communities? My friend's mom moved into one, and she's like a new person. Game nights, exercise classes, no house maintenance. Doesn't that sound nice? I smiled back, my face aching from the effort. I'm perfectly happy here, dear. Her smile tightened. Of course, just a thought. After that, things got worse. She started booking trips without telling me, leaving me alone in the house for weeks at a time, and complaining when I didn't keep things up to her standards. She'd criticize my cooking in front of Daniel, suggesting I was losing my touch or that maybe I should take a break from kitchen duties. She'd leave real estate pamphlets for senior apartments on my nightstand with sticky notes. Just FYI. The passive aggression was relentless and invisible enough that when I tried to talk to Daniel, I sounded paranoid. She's just trying to help, Mom. She replaced all my family photos with abstract art prints. She's decorating. That's what women do. She told her friends I'm declining mentally because I forgot one appointment. You did forget it, Mom. Maybe she's worried. We both are. I stopped complaining. What was the point? 3 months ago, Vanessa started hosting dinner parties. Her friends, her colleagues, people I'd never met. She'd introduce me as Daniel's mom who lives with us, emphasizing the word us like I was the guest. She'd serve elaborate meals she'd spent all day cooking, then loudly thank Daniel for letting her pursue her passion for entertaining in his family home. His family home. Not ours. His. The friends would coo and compliment, asking when they planned to renovate. Oh, we're planning a full remodel, Vanessa would say, waving her hand vaguely. Open concept kitchen, master suite addition, maybe a pool. As soon as we officially take over ownership. It's a complicated family situation. You know how these things are with older generations. They get so attached to things instead of like actual memories. I'd sit at my own dining table, invisible, while she planned my home's demolition. But I stayed quiet, kept the peace, played the role of the doddering old woman they needed me to be. Until last Tuesday. I came home from my doctor's appointment, a routine checkup that ran long because my blood pressure was elevated. Surprise, surprise. To find Vanessa in the kitchen, meal prepping for her week. She was making her usual grain bowl nonsense, weighing portions on a digital scale and humming along to a podcast about manifestation. Hey, Margaret, she said without looking up. I made extra if you want some. It's in the blue container. I was hungry, exhausted, and, I admit, still trying to believe she wasn't entirely awful. So I took the container, nuked it in the microwave, and sat down at the kitchen table. Vanessa was at the counter, her back to me, still portioning food. I pulled out my phone to check messages. The screen was dark, and I couldn't remember where I'd left it. I stood up, muttering, "Where did I put that damn thing?" I walked toward the living room, loudly enough that she'd know I'd left the room. But then I stopped. Something, instinct, providence, Thomas's ghost, made me step quietly back to the doorway. I watched through the gap in the doorframe. Vanessa glanced over her shoulder, confirming the room was empty. Then she walked to my plate, my food, and stood over it for a moment. The kitchen light was bright. I saw everything. She looked at the doorway again, then back at the plate. She leaned forward, pursed her lips, and spat directly onto my food. Not a dainty spit, a deliberate, wet glob of saliva that landed with a soft splat on the quinoa and vegetables. She picked up my fork, stirred it in, mixing her spit into every bite. Then she smiled like she'd just accomplished something satisfying. She walked back to the counter, picked up her phone, and kept scrolling. My legs felt like water. My vision tunneled. Every kind word I'd bitten back, every insult I'd swallowed, every piece of myself I'd surrendered to keep the peace erupted inside me like a volcano. that had been dormant too long. I stepped into the kitchen. Found it, I said pleasantly, holding up my phone that I'd had in my pocket the whole time. Vanessa jumped slightly, then smiled. Oh, good. I sat back down at the table, picked up my fork, looked at the food that contained her contempt, her hatred, her absolute certainty that I was too pathetic to matter. And I made a decision. I put the fork down. Actually, Vanessa, I said quietly, I'm not very hungry anymore. Suit yourself. She didn't look up from her phone. I stood up, carried my plate to the garbage, and scraped every bite into the trash. Then I washed the plate, dried it, and put it away with hands that didn't shake at all. Because I wasn't scared anymore. I was done. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about Thomas's last words, about the house, about the deed locked in my safe deposit box, about 2 years of humiliation I'd endured because I'd been too afraid, too guilty, too trained to be nice. By morning, I'd made a plan. I called my lawyer, Edward Morrison, the same man who'd handled Thomas's estate. I hadn't spoken to him in years, but he remembered me immediately. Margaret, how are you holding up? I need to verify something about my property deed, I said. And I need to understand my rights. Can someone force me out of my own home if they're living there? A pause. Are you safe, Margaret? Physically, yes. Emotionally, that's another story. We talked for an hour. Edward confirmed what I already knew. The house was entirely mine. Daniel had no legal claim. Vanessa had none. They were essentially tenants at will, living there because I allowed it. But Margaret, Edward said gently, this is your son. Are you sure you want to go down this road? What road? The one where I'm respected in my own home? That one? There might be other solutions. Edward, if someone spat in your food, what would you do? Silence. Then I'd spit back, metaphorically speaking. Exactly. We scheduled an appointment for the following week. I needed to review my options, maybe update my will, make sure everything was airtight. But I didn't wait a week to start spitting back. The morning after I found my phone, I woke up with absolute clarity. For 2 years, I'd been shrinking, making myself smaller, quieter, less important. I'd apologized for existing in my own space. That ended now. I started with breakfast. Vanessa had claimed the kitchen as her domain, filling the pantry with her organic, non-GMO, ethically sourced provisions, while pushing my processed foods to a bottom shelf she called Margaret's section. Like I was a confused roommate who didn't understand nutrition. That morning, I made a full breakfast. Eggs, bacon, toast, hash browns. I used every burner, every pan, and left them in the sink. She came downstairs at 7:30 in her workout clothes, expecting her usual silent kitchen, where she could blend her celery ginger nightmare smoothie in peace. Instead, she found me at the table, eating bacon and reading the newspaper Thomas and I had subscribed to for 40 years. Morning, I said cheerfully. She stared at the mess, the greasy tans, the splattered stovetop, the crumbs on the counter. Did you cook? I did. I live here, Vanessa. Sometimes I eat food. Right, but she gestured vaguely at the chaos. Were you planning to clean up? Eventually. Would you like some bacon? It's delicious. Real pork, full fat. None of that turkey bacon nonsense. Her jaw tightened. No thank you. I don't eat animals. Since when? You had chicken at dinner 3 days ago. That was different. It was free range. It was from Costco, sweetie. I bought it. She yanked open the fridge, grabbed her ingredients, and began aggressively blending her smoothie. The motor whined like a dying animal. When she finished, she poured it into her mason jar, slammed the blender into the sink on top of my pans, and left without another word. I smiled into my coffee. Daniel came down 10 minutes later, already running late. He grabbed a granola bar from Vanessa's stash, kissed the top of my head absently, and said, "Morning, Mom. Hey, could you try to clean up after breakfast? Van's been stressed about the kitchen mess." I looked at him, really looked at him. When had my son become this man? This stranger who prioritized his wife's aesthetic preferences over his mother's dignity? "Of course, honey," I said sweetly. "I'll clean up, right after I finish my breakfast. In my house, at my table." He paused, catching something in my tone. "Mom, have a good day at work, Daniel." He left, confused but too rushed to pursue it. I cleaned the kitchen eventually, after I'd finished my breakfast, my second cup of coffee, and the entire newspaper. I took my time. It was my house, my kitchen, my schedule. That afternoon, Vanessa came home with shopping bags, more throw pillows, more decor, more attempts to erase me. She set them in the living room and called out, "Margaret, can you help me hang these new prints?" I was in the den, looking through old photo albums. "I'm busy, dear." "It'll just take a second." I said I'm busy. Silence, then footsteps. She appeared in the doorway, all fake concern. "Are you feeling okay? You seem off." "I'm fine. I'm just not your assistant." "Excuse me?" I said I'm not your assistant, or your maid, or your inconvenient elderly roommate who exists to make your life comfortable. I'm the owner of this house, and I'm busy. Her face went through several expressions: shock, anger, something calculating. "Wow, okay. I was just asking for help, but if you want to be hostile." "I'm not hostile, Vanessa. I'm just done." "Done with what?" "With pretending." I returned to my photo album. After a moment, she left. I heard her on the phone minutes later, voice hushed, but angry. "Totally losing it, babe. Like full-on paranoid old lady vibes. We need to seriously talk about next steps, because I can't." I turned up the volume on my TV. The next few days, I made myself impossible to ignore. I played my music, old country, big band, all the songs Thomas loved, without headphones. I left my books on the coffee table. I reorganized the pantry, putting my food at eye level and hers on the bottom shelf. I stopped asking permission to exist. Vanessa retaliated with aggressive politeness. "Margaret, would you mind terribly if I moved this photo? It's blocking the natural light." "Yes, I would mind. Don't touch it." "Oh, okay. I just thought since we all live here." "We don't all live here equally, Vanessa. This is my house. You're a guest." Her smile could have cut glass. "Right. Of course. The house we pay all the utilities for. The house we maintain. But sure, you're the owner." "I am the owner. Would you like to see the deed?" That shut her up. But it also escalated things. Daniel started coming home to a war zone. Vanessa would greet him with tearful complaints about my sudden personality change and concerning behavior. I'd counter with factual observations about boundaries and respect. He'd try to mediate, to smooth things over, to make everyone happy. "Can't we all just get along?" he'd plead. "Mom, Van's trying her best. Van, Mom's going through something. Let's just breathe." But I was done breathing through disrespect. The breaking point came on a Thursday evening. Vanessa had invited her book club over, without asking me. 8 women I'd never met, sprawled across my living room, drinking wine and discussing some memoir about finding yourself after divorce. They were loud, careless, and treated my home like a rental hall. I stayed in my bedroom until I got thirsty. When I came downstairs, they barely acknowledged me. Vanessa introduced me as Daniel's mom, Margaret, in that same dismissive tone, then immediately turned back to her friends. I poured a glass of water in the kitchen. Through the wall, I heard one of them ask, "So, when are you guys planning to buy your own place?" Vanessa's laugh was bitter. "That's the question, isn't it? We're sort of stuck right now, family situation. Daniel's mom owns this place, and she's very attached. It's complicated. God, I can't imagine living with my mother-in-law. You're a saint. It's been challenging, but we're working on solutions. Sometimes you have to be patient with older people, you know? They get confused about what's best for them. Another woman chimed in. My mom was like that. We finally had to move her to assisted living for her own safety. It was hard, but she's so much happier now. That's such a good point, Lisa. I should look into places. For Margaret's sake, obviously. The house is getting to be too much for her. She's forgetting things, getting emotional. Classic signs. I stood in the kitchen, glass shaking in my hand, listening to my daughter-in-law plan my exile in my own living room. I walked into the living room. 8 pairs of eyes turned to meet. Vanessa's face went pale. Margaret, she said brightly, I heard what you were just. And since you're all here, in my home, discussing my future, let me clarify a few things. Mom, Daniel appeared from somewhere, looking panicked. I'm 73, not dead. I'm not forgetting things. I'm not confused. I'm not too attached to my house. I'm appropriately attached because I built it with my husband over 47 years. Every room has our history. This isn't a house. It's my life. Vanessa stood up. Margaret, I think you're misunderstanding. I understand perfectly. You want me gone so you can have what's mine. You think if you suggest it enough, plant enough seeds about my declining mental state, you can manipulate me into leaving. Or better yet, manipulate my son into forcing me out. That's not true. Her voice was shrill now. Daniel, tell her that's not true. Daniel looked between us, drowning. Mom, no one's trying to force you anywhere. Then why is your wife discussing assisted living like it's inevitable? Because we're worried about you. Fair? My voice dropped to something cold and quiet. You want to talk about fair? I gave you $8,000 for your wedding. I opened my home when you had nowhere to go. I've paid every property tax, every repair, every expense while you two lived here rent-free. And you think I'm being unfair because I won't hand over my house like it's a party favor? We've been subsidizing you, Vanessa screamed. Groceries, utilities, internet. Which I never asked you to pay. You insisted. You took over. And now you're using it as leverage to make me feel guilty for existing in my own home. Daniel stepped between us. Stop, both of you. Just stop. We stopped. The silence was awful. I can't do this anymore, Daniel said quietly. Mom, I love you, but you've been impossible lately. Picking fights, being difficult. I've been setting boundaries. You're worried about yourselves. About equity and investment in Instagram-worthy renovations. About erasing me so you can pretend this was always yours. The book club women were gathering purses, backing toward the door, desperate to escape the drama. Vanessa's mask slipped entirely. You're being completely unreasonable. We've given up 2 years of our lives, living in this outdated museum, walking on eggshells around your precious memories, putting our future on hold. No one asked you to. You begged to move in. You said it was temporary. It was supposed to be, but you won't budge, won't compromise, won't even consider what's fair. You've been hostile. Vanessa's trying. She's really trying. And you're punishing her for wanting to make this place feel like home. It's not her home, Daniel. It's mine. He flinched like I'd slapped him. So that's it? You're gonna hold that over us forever? Make us feel like guests? Like we're imposing? You are imposing. You've taken over my house, my life, my space, and you're mad that I won't disappear quietly. Vanessa started crying. Real tears this time. Not performative ones. I can't do this anymore, Danny. I can't. She hates me. She's never going to accept me. Maybe we should just go. Go where, Van? We can't afford anything. I don't care. We'll figure it out. Anything's better than this. She ran upstairs. Daniel looked at me with something I'd never seen before in his eyes. Resentment. I hope you're happy, Mom, he said, because you're about to be very alone. He followed his wife upstairs, leaving me standing in my living room, my empty, silent living room, wondering if I'd just won or lost. They didn't speak to me for 3 days. Daniel left for work early, came home late. Vanessa stayed in her room, only emerging when she knew I was elsewhere. The house felt like a morgue, cold, heavy, full of ghosts. I almost apologized, almost knocked on their door and took it all back, said I'd been wrong, said anything to return to the uneasy peace we'd had. But then I remembered the spit in my food, the contempt, the years of small cruelties I'd swallowed. So I stayed quiet and waited. On day 4, Daniel came downstairs while I was making lunch. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, his shoulders slumped. Mom, we need to talk. My heart sank. Okay. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Thomas and I had drawn house plans, where Daniel had done his homework, where 1,000 ordinary family moments had happened. Vanessa and I are leaving, he said. No preamble, just fact. Where will you go? Her friend has a basement apartment. It's small, but it's something. We can't stay here anymore. Daniel, let me finish. His voice was strained. I know you think Van's the problem, but Mom, you've changed. You're not the person you were. You're angry all the time, picking fights, making everything difficult. I don't know if it's grief or aging or what, but living with you has become impossible. Each word was a blade. I've changed because I stopped letting you erase me. That's not what we're doing. Yes, it is. You've watched your wife disrespect me for 2 years. She's redecorated my home without permission, thrown out my belongings, told her friends I'm mentally declining, and planned to move me into assisted living. And you think I'm the problem because I finally said no? He rubbed his face. Van made mistakes. She admitted that. But you've made her feel unwelcome from the start. I gave her $8,000. I opened my home, and you've held it over her head ever since. Every argument, you bring up the money, the house, everything you've given us. You act like we owe you eternal gratitude for basic decency. I stood up, shaking. Basic decency? Is basic decency spitting in someone's food? He blinked. What? Last Tuesday. I watched your wife spit in my dinner, deliberately, then stir it in so I wouldn't notice. That's who you're defending, Daniel. His face went white. No, Van wouldn't. I saw her. I was in the doorway. She thought I'd left the room, then she spat in my food like I was garbage. You're lying. The accusation hung between us like poison gas. Excuse me? You're making this up to turn me against her. This is exactly what I'm talking about. The manipulation, the paranoia. I am not paranoid. I know what I saw. You're 73, Mom. You forget things. You misinterpret. Don't you dare. My voice was ice. Don't you dare use my age to dismiss me. I saw what I saw. Your wife hates me. She's been trying to drive me out of my own home, and you've been helping her. Daniel stood up, his chair scraping harshly. We're leaving tomorrow, and honestly, I'm relieved, because this, he gestured at me, at the kitchen, at everything, isn't healthy for any of us. Fine. Leave. We will. But Daniel, I kept my voice steady. When you're gone, don't come back asking for anything. Not money, not help, not the house you think you're entitled to. Because this is my house. The deed has my name. Not yours, not hers. Mine. He stared at me like I was a stranger. I never wanted the house, Mom. I wanted my mother. But she's gone. I don't know who you are anymore. He walked away. I sat alone at the table, shaking, wondering if I'd become the villain in my own story. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying his words, You're not the person you were. Was he right? Had standing up for myself turned me into someone unrecognizable? Or had I finally become visible after years of being ignored? Around 2 a.m., I heard voices through the wall. Daniel and Vanessa's room shared a wall with mine. They weren't trying to whisper. Can't believe she actually said that. About the spit, like I'm some kind of monster. She's getting paranoid, Van. I'm worried about her mental state. Or she's lying to manipulate you, make you choose between us. She's still my mom. A mom who's making you miserable. God, Danny, when was the last time you were happy? Really happy? It's been 2 years of walking on eggshells, living in her shrine to the past. We're 30-something years old, living like we're teenagers. It's pathetic. I know. Do you? Because you keep defending her. She's toxic, Daniel. And if you can't see that, maybe this isn't just about the house. Maybe it's about whether you're ever going to put your wife first. Silence. Then Daniel, quietly. You're right. I'm sorry. You're right. I rolled over, pulled Thomas's pillow over my head, and let myself cry. The next morning, they packed. I stayed in my room, listening to them move through the house, drawers opening, boxes being taped, the sounds of departure. Around noon, Daniel knocked on my door. Mom, we're leaving now. I opened the door. He stood there with 2 suitcases, looking younger than his 34 years. I love you, he said. I hope you know that. I love you too. Maybe in a few weeks we can talk, when things are calmer. Maybe. He hugged me, briefly, awkwardly. Then he was gone. Vanessa didn't say goodbye. I watched from the window as they loaded Daniel's car, backed out of the driveway, and disappeared down the street. The house was silent. I walked through it, room by room. The living room with its wrong artwork, the kitchen with its stark white walls, the guest room they'd claimed, now empty except for a few hangers and the faint smell of Vanessa's perfume. And I felt nothing. No relief, no victory, just emptiness. That night, I met with Edward Morrison. So they're gone, he said, reviewing the notes I'd brought. Yes, and you want to ensure the house stays yours. I want to ensure that if something happens to me, it goes where I want it to go, not to someone who spat in my food and planned my exile. Edward nodded slowly. We can do that. Update your will, create a trust, make it ironclad. But Margaret, are you sure? Once you solidify this, once you put it in writing, there's no easy way back. Family rifts become permanent. The rift's already there, Edward. I'm just acknowledging it. He studied me over his reading glasses. What about Daniel? He's still your son. Daniel made his choice. He chose someone who despises me over his own mother. I'm just protecting what's mine. Fair enough. He pulled out papers. Let's talk options. We spent 2 hours going through everything. Edward suggested a trust that would prevent Daniel or Vanessa from ever claiming the house. I could designate charities, distant relatives, anyone I wanted. The house would be protected. One more thing, Edward said as I was leaving. Have you considered that maybe Daniel doesn't know? About the spit, I mean? Really know. Sometimes people can't see what they don't want to see. He called me a liar, Edward. He called you mistaken. There's a difference. Not to me. I left his office with paperwork to review and a court date scheduled for the following month. Everything was in motion. The house would be mine, permanently and legally untouchable. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I drove home to an empty house that suddenly felt less like a sanctuary and more like a prison. 3 weeks passed. I settled into a routine. I painted the kitchen back to yellow, Thomas's yellow. I brought my photo albums back to the living room. I planted tomatoes in the garden Vanessa had called chaotic. I reclaimed every inch of my space. But the silence was deafening. No one called. No one visited. I went to my bridge club and pretended everything was fine. I smiled at the grocery store clerk and acted like I wasn't buying food for one. I watched television in the evenings and tried not to notice the empty chairs. Then, on a Tuesday morning, my phone rang. Daniel. I stared at his name on the screen for 4 rings before answering. "Hi, honey. Mom." His voice sounded strange, tight. "Can I come over? I need to talk to you." Of course. He arrived 30 minutes later, alone. He looked thinner, grayer. The apartment living wasn't agreeing with him. We sat in the living room, my living room, with my photos back on the walls. "I've been thinking," he started, not meeting my eyes, "about what you said, about Van and the food." My heart clenched. "Daniel, I didn't believe you. I thought you were exaggerating, or misremembering, or trying to manipulate me. Because Van wouldn't do something like that. The woman I married wouldn't. But," he pulled out his phone, "but I started noticing things. Little things. The way she talks about people when they're not around. Her friends, her coworkers, even me sometimes. There's this cruelty underneath. I'd been ignoring it because it wasn't directed at me." He handed me the phone. It was open to a text thread between Vanessa and someone named Chelsea. "Vanessa. Finally out of the geriatric prison, LOL. Chelsea. How's the new place?" Vanessa. "Tiny and depressing. But at least I don't have to pretend to respect Danny's mom anymore. God, I hated that woman." Chelsea. 2 years is a long con." Vanessa. "Worth it though. Once she croaks, Danny inherits and we can sell. The lot alone is probably worth $400K. Just have to wait out her bitterness." Vanessa. "I do what I have to. Danny's too soft. Someone has to think long term." I read it twice. Then a third time. The words blurred. "When did you see this?" I asked quietly. "Last night." She left her phone unlocked. I wasn't snooping. I just saw it. "What did you say to her?" "Nothing yet. I wanted to talk to you first." He finally looked at me and his eyes were red. "Mom, I'm so sorry. You were right. About everything. And I called you a liar. I chose her over you. I don't know if you can forgive me, but I needed you to know that I know now. I see it. I wanted to say I told you so. I wanted to rage, to make him feel every ounce of pain his dismissal had caused. But looking at my son, broken, ashamed, lost, I couldn't. "What are you going to do?" I asked instead. "Leave her. Obviously. I can't be with someone who..." He gestured helplessly. "Who's that person? Who could be that cruel to you, to anyone? Who was playing a long game, waiting for you to die? Where will you go?" He laughed bitterly. "I don't know. I can't afford anything on my own. I guess I'll figure it out." We sat in silence. "You could come home," I finally said. "Mom, I don't deserve..." "You don't. But you're still my son. And this is still your home. Not hers, never hers, but yours." He started crying. Big, ugly sobs that shook his whole body. I moved to sit beside him, and he collapsed against my shoulder like he used to when he was small and the world was too much. "I'm so sorry," he kept saying. "I'm so, so sorry." "I know, honey. I know." We stayed like that until the crying stopped and the sun moved across the floor, and something in both of us began to heal. "What about the house?" he asked eventually. "The deed you mentioned. It's mine. It's always been mine. Your father made me promise never to give it up, and I won't. But Daniel, I was never keeping it from you. I was keeping it from her, from anyone who tried to take it. When I'm gone, it'll go where I decide. And maybe that's you. Maybe it's not. We'll see." He nodded. "That's fair. More than fair. But if you come back, there are rules. My photos stay up. My yellow kitchen stays yellow. You contribute to expenses, but I make the decisions about my house. And you go to therapy, because if you couldn't see what she was doing, there's work to do." And I told him stories about his father, about building this house, about all the love that went into every corner. He listened like he was hearing it for the first time, and maybe he was. Vanessa called 14 times that evening. Daniel didn't answer. When she finally showed up at the door 3 days later, demanding to talk, I answered. "He doesn't want to see you," I said pleasantly. "You poisoned him against me." "No, sweetie. You did that yourself. I saw your texts. The ones about waiting for me to croak so you could sell my house." Her face went white. I was venting. I didn't mean. You meant every word. And so did I when I said this house has my name on it. Not yours, not his, mine. You gambled on my death, and you lost. Now please leave before I call the police for trespassing. She opened her mouth, closed it, then turned and left. I never saw her again. Daniel filed for divorce a week later. It was ugly and expensive, but he got through it. He still lives here, in his old bedroom that we repainted together. He's dating someone new, a kind woman who compliments my cooking and asks about Thomas and treats my home with respect. The house is still mine. The deed is still in my name. But it doesn't feel like a weapon anymore. It feels like what it always was, a home built on love, protected by boundaries, and strong enough to weather anything. Even betrayal, even family, even spit in the food. So tell me, what would you do if you discovered someone you welcomed into your home was plotting against you, waiting for you to die? Would you fight back, or would you have walked away sooner? Was I wrong to draw the line, or wrong to wait so long? Drop your thoughts below. I want to know if you'd have done this differently, because family and forgiveness aren't always the same thing.